All right. Good evening, everyone, and good day to all of you who are joining us from overseas. It's our pleasure to be hosting you and have you here today, joining our live webinar session and podcast with a special guest, Daryl Tan. And
Thank
Daryl
you.
is currently in transition. However, Daryl is a digital product designer with over a decade of experience working in various agencies, startups, and small medium enterprises. So he's a curious soul himself and enjoys crafting meaningful experiences by leveraging on the latest data, processes, and technology. So he has done many projects and delivered many high-value projects before, and he very much enjoys implementing processes and systems while collaborating with various business, research, and product, as well as engineering units to drive product success, right? He definitely enjoys engaging people from different backgrounds, and we're gonna be asking him lots of questions today in our show, and also understanding more about his experience working for a startup, working for an agency, and being a UXer in all of this, and also training junior UXers as he is growing along as a senior UXer, right? And for those of you who are familiar with the work culture in agencies and startups, you know it can be very brutal and very intense. We were just talking about how skipping dinner is a common occurrence. So we will talk about managing burnout, managing stress in such an environment, and being able to thrive in such an environment. So can we please put our hands together for Daryl? Virtual round of applause. And welcome, Daryl. So yeah, tell us a little bit about, this experience of skipping lots of dinners and not being able to go back and have proper dinner times with your family. Yeah, how does that feel like, and why is it necessary in working in a startup or in an agency?
Thank you, Dylan. Thank you so much for having me here. Super appreciate it. So everything that you mentioned earlier on, that was usually my sales pitch. But now that you've said it, yes, I guess we're done with rounds of introductions. So skipping dinners, very common. Also, not having to see the evening sun. Stepping out of your offices super late, that's really common lah. So and it applies for both types of environments, in a startup, in a agency. Really depends on your workload as well. So yeah, so where do I begin, Dylan? What should I talk about?
How do you do that for so many years and not lose your friends?
I don't have friends. No, I'm just kidding. I have a very small group of friends who are very understanding. Some of them are in this line as well, so they're very understanding. They know what it's like. We have similar experiences, so we usually just wing it lah. Most of the time, it's a lot of improv. It's very common where I'm going to go meet someone for dinner. Have to delay it for maybe an hour or so. So thank God I have very understanding friends who are still around in my life.
That's great, and I'm glad to hear. Well, outside of friends, a lot of talk has been about mental health these days, right? So working, it sounds like you have to work late. If you have to work late, then it means you also have less time for yourself, less time to recharge. Does that take a toll on your mental health?
Yes, definitely. But your mileage may vary from person to person. So, are we jumping to managing burnout?
We'll talk about that first. Yeah.
Okay. So, I have a controversial opinion on burning out. I think so. It was very interesting where prior to joining this webinar where we were discussing like what were some of the topics that you want to bring to our viewers. So we talked about like burning out, and I said to you, I wanted to keep it real. So an opinion that I have when it comes to burnout, a lot of the times you go online, you listen to podcasts, you read articles, you watch videos, you go like, oh, okay, these are some ways to manage burnout. What you can do to control getting overwhelmed. But I have, my opinion is such that burnout is inevitable, and I'll tell you why as we go along later on. But I think it's very
You're talking
important,
about
like,
burnout is inevitable in any job, you're saying.
yeah, any job actually.
Wow.
I mean, you just think about it, like you have colleagues that go on vacation, you go on vacation, they come back, you go, how's your vacation? They go like, oh, great. And then what's the next thing they'll say? They say that, oh, I wish I never had to come back. So I don't remember the last time someone came back on a vacation, especially for creatives. I don't remember the last time someone came back and said like, I'm super recharged, I'm ready to get to work. Especially in the scene here. I mean, I'm just keeping it real. But yeah, no one, as far as I can remember, no one has ever said that to me. They always go like, oh, I wish I never had to leave. I wish I had like one more week in Hokkaido, in Japan, or like everywhere else. So I think burnout is just gonna happen. It's how you deal with it later, when you get to that stage. What are the plans that you have made for it? It's also important to like knowing the kind of work that leaves you feeling fulfilled and energized versus the kind of work that just drains you can be an important limitation to recognize. So that's just something to keep in mind.
I think that's great that you mentioned it, and thanks for keeping it real. I also like to say not everyone gets to go to Hokkaido to manage their stress and burnout, but I see that as a privilege as well.
That's
so,
right.
I'm just wondering, like between the trips, between the rest breaks and the travels,
right?
How do you manage it, like on a day-to-day basis, right? And I think you brought up a really good point as well, like fulfilling work. So, but I think to a certain extent, we all choose the work we do. So what's wrong? Like, is there a type of work that drains you and drains your soul? Like, tell me more.
It depends on the kind of environment you're in. The two polarizing environment types, I guess, would be startups and agencies, and a similar environment that's close to agencies, but same difference is I'm gonna just group it together and call it like corporate. So I think in between those, it's really I'm a simple dude. I enjoy the simple things in life. So a lot of designers I know, they sacrifice their time. They just put it into work. This product day in day out, they eat, sleep, and breathe the product that they're designing. And they sacrifice a lot of their interests and their passion in lieu of that. So try to find the little things in life that make you happy. Go out and do them. Go and have like dinner with your friends, spend time with your family. It's very cliche because everyone says this, but just bear in mind that the time that you sacrifice when you're working on a product, when you're at work, you're not getting the time back, man. So it's just really something to keep in mind. I hate to constantly repeat this. It's everywhere, but it is the truth, because it'll come to a point where you've done so much work, whether or not that product is successful or unsuccessful, really, time spent is not time that you're getting back if you're not doing what makes you happy.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's, I mean, especially working in a product, right? On a product, work is never done. It's always a cycle of continuous improvement. The product can always be better. So it really depends on where do you draw the line. And you've done this for a decade, right? More than a decade. You've done this for more than a decade. And
14 years.
and
14 years, man.
yeah, what's keeping you sane for 14 years? Like why do you know the next job you're gonna go into is gonna be the same thing? Like what's keeping you fresh? What's keeping you like going, right? Despite knowing you're gonna go through the same thing again. Yeah.
That is a tricky question to answer. But what has kept me going was you needed to survive, survivability lah. So the past few years, I think a lot of people had the impression that tech, getting into tech, it's a lucrative industry. So I guess, and it, to be honest, a couple of years ago it was, until it started getting a little bit saturated these days. Generally, it's not difficult to survive in terms of like financially, you can be quite comfortable depending on which environment you land up in. So for me, it wasn't really about well, it's about the work. I don't want this to sound like bad or anything, but surviving, I guess. Yeah, that was my number one. I grew up poor. Yeah, so knowing what having to worry about day-to-day expenses and whatnot. So those were some of the challenges that I had to deal with growing up, and I don't want to put myself in that position anymore. So and tech was it allowed me to survive. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say also it brought you to a place where it improved your quality of life as well?
Oh, definitely.
Because of the fact that you're in tech. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. It was it saved me. And for that I will be forever grateful for design in general. I still love it until today. I don't hate it. I've learned so much from it. I've grown from it. Yeah.
Okay, so what would you say to people who are going into their first job in an agency or a startup? You know,
right.
like what do they need to know before they join an agency, or what do they need to do before they join a startup? Do they have to sacrifice their dinners?
I think these days a lot of companies will encourage a very good work-life balance, so you don't have to sacrifice too many dinners, but it's usually how you plan your time. I think for joining a startup, there are some differences what to expect versus joining an agency. So for startups, I think one of the strengths of a startups is that you are able to collaborate with various units. You can be, and I say that like you can be collaborating with your the CEO or the founder. He or she could be working like right next to you. So that's a very unique experience to have. Working at the startups will also allow you to pick up auxiliary skills, which is kind of exclusive to startups, I would say. You get to learn about a lot of business nuances that you would not necessarily pick up at other environments. The work is interesting, but you're also working on one product, and you're working on that one product over a long period of time. The ultimate goal, of course, would be everybody scrambling to get the product into the market quickly and gain traction with that product. It's nice also working at startups, because generally the idea working at startups is they have this whole taking care of people, which is an attraction. So you have your typical very common catered lunches and your ping pong tables and whatnot. So it's a very nice feeling to be in a startup. I would also say it makes you a consistent creative. by learning to stay the course, because you're working on one product, right? So you're always going back to the drawing board to iterate, to concept, to prototype. So your growth at a startup is more, I would say, camaraderie based, as you have to believe in the product. So whichever startups that you land yourself into, believing in the product is very important.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like college to me.
Yeah. Yes.
However,
You're right.
is there anything bad about being in a startup?
Bad. Yeah. It sounds bad when you say it that way, lah. It's funding dependent for sure. So the number one thing going into startup, manage your own expectations. It really is funding dependent, and I've had this happen before. So I've joined back a couple of years. I joined the startup 2 weeks into the role. You start making friends and everything, and then I had someone come up to me and go like, "Hey, actually, water cooler talk, we're not doing that well." So everybody else is scrambling to find that next opportunity. They're already preparing to move on, and I just joined like 2-3 weeks ago, a month in, and then you get this sort of news. Not very encouraging, not not very motivating at all. Then you start questioning yourself, like, what am I doing here? Is this the right thing? And you don't hear this from management. You will never hear this from management. Typically you hear this from the people who have been there for a while. Then you get to know them, and then hey, guess what? This place is not doing too well. Get ready. So funding dependent. The working conditions may not be up to expectations. One startup I've been to, I mean, they always say like, oh, don't be a softie, just deal with it, deal with whatever you have. But to be fair, this is very real. Some places may not even have your basic needs, necessities. They don't even have a water cooler, if you can believe that. For one, I had to run down to the convenience store to like buy water, that sort of thing. Some of the other cons, it's less structured in terms of timing, your policies, your perks and your benefits. So everything can be quite chaotic. It's not set up. It's literally called a startup. So you got to be prepared for, oh, okay, one day you might come into work on 10 a.m. one day. The next day, and you're working late all throughout the night. Next day you come in at like 2 or 3, and everybody has their own timing. So coordination can be a little bit chaotic, a little bit messy. But that's a minor issue that you can work around.
And I think the startups we're talking about over here are probably like, less than 20 people, and they're pretty early, right? These are the types of startups we're talking about.
Yeah.
Would you know if it's any different if they're like bigger, like maybe there are 100 people, and they're a little bit more stable. Yeah, they're maybe in a Series B or C. I don't know.
At 100 people, okay, so startups, they tend to grow like very quickly. Almost every other month there's a call for expansion, and we're expanding this team. Engineering goes bigger, design goes bigger. Generally, it's I would say the honeymoon kind of feeling. It feels nice when the team is small and agile. As it grows bigger and bigger and bigger, then it starts to have a lot of red taping. Some processes are just starting to be put into place. So that's where you typically grow with the startups. But a lot of common mistake that I'm not sure if it's a mistake, but from what I've seen, with fast expansion, it comes with a lot of risk. But then again, as creatives, it's outside our pay grade, so we don't have to actually be actively worrying about it. We just need to think about, okay, let's make sure this product works, and everybody's like that. They have like a hive mind of trying to make this work, because they know that if it bombs. Yeah, so also I suppose be prepared to multi-hat. That's one thing. So you might not only be doing design. You could be doing design today. Next day someone needs help, and then suddenly you're the copywriter. You got to see the copy, and you know nothing about copy. So and having to eat, sleep, and breathe product can kind of feel arduous. You have like new releases and versions of product that can make you feel like you're stuck in a wheel. And yeah. So at the end of the whole experience at a startup, just be prepared that the resume that you're going to be putting out, it's going to look very chaotic, because you're going to be thinking like, oh, okay, I've done, I not only have I designed for this product, I have done copywriting, I've done marketing, I've done like so much stuff, and then it kind of feels super fragmented. So in some cases, it looks good on your resume. In some cases, it doesn't. It really depends on what your next opportunity is going to be. So that's just really something to keep in mind.
It does sound, as what you said, Daryl, it sounds like a lot of growth, because you're being stretched in areas you're maybe not so used to being stretched. But at the same time, it is also very chaotic. It means you need to keep adapting, and that can also be tiring, right? Yeah. Do you have any? You mentioned something about environment earlier, right? Like does all these like ping pong tables and all that, do they matter? Like, or what would you say is a good? Please say is a good environment.
It makes the environment look good, but I think it's just fluff. So one of the things that that we're going to be talking about later on is coaching junior designers. So okay, I'm not going to go off tangent right now, but it's a little bit fluffy. Fine, you use a ping pong table like after work for maybe 30 minutes, just to get to know a new staff who has joined, new designer who has joined. But other than that, I don't know, maybe you have aspirations of being a national ping pong champion, then you use the table. But but yeah, most of the time you're so focused on work, you clock in at like maybe 10, 11, you're at it the whole day. At the end of the day, you just want to go home and crash. You don't really want to spend any more time on a ping pong table. So yeah, that's what I have for ping pong table.
So what would you say? Well, I mean, yeah, we I think we got we got enough flack on the ping pong table, but like what would make a good environment then? Like in your opinion, if you were to choose a startup, right, and you say, hey, it needs to have a good environment, like what would you identify as a good environment in the startup?
Getting to know each and every member on your team on a, I don't want to say like super deep level, but understanding how this person, what makes this person tick. There isn't an answer for this. There isn't like a one size fits all kind of t-shirt answer, like, oh, I'm going to buy a new ping pong table, everyone's going to love it, because I don't really care for a ping pong table. Some people love it. I think getting to know that individual people on your team, that's super important. Maybe this person is a little bit more do the work, finish for the day, go home, don't want to just stop interacting with everybody else. Some people are more sociable, that's fine. One of the companies that I work for, we had drinking sessions every Friday. So that was part of the culture. That person is also right here in the chat. I can see you, shout out. Hey. But yeah, but as your team grows, it's understandable that you're not going to be able to do all this stuff. I think what's important is just basically having health insurance is nice. It's things that allow people to survive day to day. Health
Yeah.
insurance, dental.
You feel like they're taken care of. Yeah.
Feel that they're taken care of. That's super important to me, I guess. So wherever that I end up in, but the benefits is always super important, more important to me than like catered lunches, pizza. I don't really care.
Okay. No, that sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
So startup founders and bosses, please take this as a feedback as well.
I'm gonna be blacklisted now, man.
No, right. I'm sure you're fine. I think now I want to know the good, bad, and ugly about agencies. I understand you spend more time in your career in agencies,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
what's good, what's bad, what's ugly about it?
Well, if you join an agency with a good name, a big name, you have bragging rights. Bragging rights is always nice because it'll look good on your resume.
What's an
And
example of an agency with a good name?
I'm not gonna take the risk and name drop agencies now, dude.
Okay.
That's entrapment. That's a trap. That's big. That's
All right.
But
I'll let you off.
okay,
please.
you typically know, like, you have your big name agencies. So bragging rights, they'll look nice. You have better job stability, that's for sure. It's not so much funding dependent. Better job stability doesn't mean you won't be able to get X, because you can still very well get X.
Yeah, I heard when they don't get a project or a renewal,
Right.
they get X. Yeah.
Right. So then they will do with a reduction exercise. The structure is there compared to startups. There's a lot more structure. There's generally more structure lah. The benefits are there. They have some nice benefit. I'm going to like kind of just generalize and group agency and
the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Kind of corporate together lah. There are some exclusive benefits and perks that comes with agencies, and some that are corporate specific. But in general, where was I? Structure and benefits, those are there.
I think it depends also on how big your agency is as well. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That happens as well. It depends on how big your agency is. If you are at a corporate, there are nice facilities. Okay, but generally, the mindset working at an agency, you will be surrounded with like-minded individuals. That's agency specific, not so much corporate. The atmosphere, I guess, for agencies, the atmosphere, you typically have super nice ergonomic chairs and dual monitor setups, and that is the luxury. Is really nice to have compared to startups where they might typically tell you, "Oh, use your own machine. We will give you some sort of rebate later on." But yeah, generally you bring your own machine to work. So agency wise, there's a little bit more welfare. You're provided with nice ergo chair, ergo tune, whatever. The work there is very gated, and there's a steady flow of work. So in turn, that translates to like the vast learning through your research, through your whatever project that comes in. You typically research for your project flows, the lifespan of the project, and that challenges you. It grows your knowledge. So the time that I have been in agencies has allowed me to, I would say I would have a pretty vast general knowledge base. It's a lot of it is, 90% of it is useless information. But being on these projects, it really, really broadens your general knowledge. Like for example, I might not know anything about the marine industry today, but tomorrow if a project comes in, I gotta do research for that. The next thing I know, hey, you'd ask me anything about that. I'm not like a marine oil and gas Wikipedia kind of person now. So that's nice to have. You become smarter. So the learning is there. The work varies, but it's steady flow of work. I think some of the challenges that come with agencies Okay, this one is corporate specific. There's a hierarchy. So, but some people appreciate hierarchy. So that might be a pro to them, I guess. There's a lot of structure. With corporate, there's also kind of a lot of red taping going on. So bringing your ideas and processes up the chain, you're going to face with a lot of, it's slow, it's a very slow process. There's also some resistance from different departments where if you have to bounce off a certain area of your product to that department, it takes a damn long time to come back. And by the time it comes back, then maybe you get reasons like, no, we're not doing this. And then you go like, huh, why? Can you tell me more? Maybe I can approach it from a different perspective. But that person, the answers that you get, just maybe dude doesn't like it, so we're stuck, and you can't move on smoothly. Also, I think this is quite critical. Expectation wise, typically if you look at a JD for maybe a corporate company, right? So they'll go like, we're looking for someone who can take full ownership of our product or service. But in a corporate kind of environment where you have different departments, it is nigh impossible to take full ownership of a product, because like I mentioned earlier, your product gets bounced from department to department, and at the end of the day, everything feels so fragmented. You just go like, oh, okay, I'll just do my part. At the end, it's time to go home, then I'll just clock out, that kind of thing. So that's generally the kind of feeling that you will have. Other challenging things that I can think of, being in an agency or corporate environment, progression is kind of slow, but then again, your mileage may vary. Yeah, so slow progression. Your salary does not always grow to meet demands. Dress codes. Some places will have you dress up smart casual, I guess, or maybe like even formal, even though you are not client facing, but I don't make the rules. There's typically more egos, personality crashes compared to startups. This is corporate specific. But so I have a rule kind of, generally, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. Just don't. Trust me. Okay, so in an agency environment, there will always be a feeling of tension, for sure. You're always going to have thoughts at the back of your head. Oh, okay, I have deadlines to meet. Am I doing this correctly? Am I doing this well? Do I have to rely? I don't want to have to rely on my teammates, that sort of stuff. So the feeling of tension will always be like overhanging. It's always there. You have to deal with things like scope creep, deadlines, extra hours. Yeah, so those are mainly the challenges that come with working at a agency/corporate environment.
Yeah. Now that you've been on both sides, thanks for sharing the good, bad, and ugly for both sides. I do have very fond memories of my agency life, because I just remember everyone being very chill, and especially if you're working in a corporate one, it's quite nice because the welfare and the perks are not bad. Now I wanted to ask you, as a designer, our portfolio is everything, right? So yes. Which place built you a better portfolio, startup or agency? Yeah.
Do both. If you have the opportunity to do both, it doesn't matter which you step foot in the door first. You will definitely want as colorful of a resume that you can build. You don't want to shoehorn yourself and focus only on going into startups, and I've only been working on like startup products. Then when you want to maybe try a new environment, it's going to come with its own set of challenges. Maybe it used to be frowned upon, where it would seem like you're job hopping every 2 or 3 years, but do what's best for you. Expose yourself to a multitude of projects and experience and the people that you work with. Know, and from that, know which type of environment you enjoy, the kind of work that you want to do. Like if you go talk to anyone, and if they tell you like, oh, don't go to startups, just focus all your efforts on corporate, that person is straight up just giving you bad advice. For yourself, for your own personal growth, if you're just starting out, if you see an opportunity that you want to explore, just go and explore. Because if the opportunity disappears, it's going to be difficult. Yeah, I guess generally do both, but be expected to multi-head in both environments. And always remember that your work and your career and your health and happiness, that is really all that matters. Not the brand of the agency, not how fancy the building is. It really doesn't matter. That crap doesn't matter. Focus on you. If you are dedicated and you really want to like stay in this line, you can see yourself doing it for a long time. Just do that.
Yeah, I fully agree, especially in such a tough and recessionary environment right now. I mean, jobs are scarce as well. So if you have a good opportunity, why not? Like whether it's a startup or whether it's an agency. I do recall that you do get to work on slightly different problems, right? And slightly different skills, depending whether you're in a startup or agency. Yeah.
Sorry, you got.
Oh,
you.
that's
Yeah.
I think that's my wife's one. I wanted to ask a question in general. Like, what is the most memorable moment you had in an agency and the most memorable moment you had in a startup? Yeah.
You want the good one or the bad one?
It's up to you.
Most memorable agency for me. Okay, so I talked about Friday night drinking with a bunch of a super cool designer that I met. So yeah, that was a memorable time for me.
So this designer worked in the agency, or they didn't?
We were kind of considered an agency. It was like a digital arm within a events company.
Okay.
Yeah. So then within that small unit, all we had was each other, man. So we had to find things to make to entertain ourselves, and we ended up bringing. So in general, the company was quite fragmented, and we ended up, through our regular Friday drinking sessions, we ended up bringing people together. So that was one great memory that I have. Another memory that I have, memorable experience working at a startup. I got to know some pretty great designers. I think he's here today as well in the chat. What's up? So we have maintained that relationship until today. I mean, we've seen the industry grow basically from the time where startups wasn't a thing, and then the government implemented this initiative, and then suddenly you wake up the next day and everyone's a startup. Everyone wants to build products. So that was a memorable time. The work was very interesting. I was working on like blog projects and some very interesting products that I don't think we'll see very commonly these days. So that was a memorable time.
Yeah. I noticed all your memorable moments are about people. And
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the people you meet.
All about the people. Yeah. Cool. At the end of the day, like cold hard truth, everyone is replaceable. So when you're on your deathbed, no one's gonna come to you and go like, I'm so grateful for whatever you've done. It's just, so it's about the people, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely very on theme, especially these days. There's a lot of talk about AI and all that. So it's good to know that the human connection still matters a lot. And I have a question that's people related, or rather, an audience member has a question that's people related. And if I understand correctly, the audience's member is asking you: have you ever dealt with a project manager or department lead, who have a different vision from you on the project? Like, but how do you solve it if you're also one of the leaders in the project? Yeah, like competing vision, different vision from you. Yeah.
I am going to assume that this is kind of a power struggle that you're having right now. So try not to turn it into like a wee contest, because it's not about that at all. If you're super confident in a direction that you want to take a product or service in, if you're not seeing exactly eye to eye after doing your due diligence, sitting down, discussing, and having all that talk, you're super confident, take the time, do your own research. If there's an approach that you want to go for, you have to back it up with data, facts, anything that will help drive your point across. But like, don't go in swinging, because that's not going to work. It really is about understanding that person also. Make sure you have understood where this person is coming from. Don't jump to your own conclusions. Don't assume anything. If it really is where that project manager you were saying, if that project manager is really confident, I mean, it could be a business directive for So if that's the way it has got to go, then sometimes you just have to bite the stick. That quote came to me. That quote was given to me by one of my creative directors back then. But yeah, if you're really confident, again, it comes back to the point of oh wait, we haven't got to mentoring junior designers yet.
We're going to go there.
All
Do you
right.
want to go there
Okay.
now? You want to go there now?
No, not yet.
Okay.
So it's about seeing through the fluff. So hold on to that question, and then we'll circle back where we get to that. Yeah.
So what
Because
was
it's
that?
gonna
What
be
was that?
interesting.
What was that quote you mentioned earlier by your creative director again?
All right. Sometimes you just have to bite the stick, because
Sometimes you have to bite the stick like a dog. What do you mean?
it sounds bad when you put it that way.
No, I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
So
bite the stick. What does that mean?
sometimes it's an order from top down that you just don't have any other control. There's no way for you to change it. So you just have to.
You just have to.
Yeah.
You just have to suck it up. As we.
You
call
just
it.
have to suck it up and do it. Because
suck it up.
Like in the end, yeah. So it's very common, you see, because you remember what I said about JD's having you to like, oh,
yeah,
I wanted to take full ownership, and then now you can't because you're so emotionally invested, and then something like this happens, and then you go like, all right, I'll bite the stick.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the thing. I mean, like, what I notice about startups is that your role is always evolving and it's always changing. So don't expect to do the same thing like for the next 1 year, right? Like 6 months later, your role might evolve and change.
Right.
Same thing for agencies though. I mean, you're on a project, you're maximum on a project for what, 6 months? then you're on the next project.
And
Yeah.
you're not only going to be working on one project, you might be on 2 or 3 projects within 6 months. So lots of stuff.
Yeah, so many things are going on. But I think I appreciate, when I was in the agency, I was much younger, so I appreciate that dynamism, right? Like that ability to do different things and change. And I think when you're young and you have a lot of energy, that's always it's always good to to also be in an environment where people are young and have a lot of energy,
Right,
like
right.
like you. Yeah.
I
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of value. Like usually people in such environments, they're not like they're still single, right? So that's sort of like work as their focus
They're
and all
still
that.
single.
I as far as I remember, that was the case. There was a lot of single people in my agency. Yeah,
I guess so. I guess so. If you don't have any other commitments, then just work is your only commitment, and then
yeah,
it's a good thing lah.
yeah.
Depending on how you
In
look at
some
it.
way, it's a very self-selecting
Yeah,
kind of like environment. Yeah. So let's talk about growing in a environment, whether it's agency or startups. I believe any kind of mentorship that you get from such a fast-paced environment is a blessing, right? Because usually these environments don't have structured training programs. Unlike a big corporation. I remember I was in Unilever, like every month there's some kind of training for the marketers. So
mm,
um so yeah, like let's talk a little bit about your approach and your process of like growing the next generation. And I know that's something you're very interested in as well. You're hoping that after your transition, you're hoping to move into a more teaching kind of like role. So I'm curious about your process. Like, how do you mentor your juniors? How do you grow them? Yeah, what's your perspective?
this one is kind of tricky. Okay, so typically, say you've gotten to the position where you're like a senior product designer, you're tasked to like mentor a team of junior designers. Very typically, what happens is new designer comes in. There's a ton of work to be done. You immediately start throwing work at a junior designer, right? That's all wrong. So okay, and what I'm saying, what I'm about to say, couldn't exactly be done during COVID, during the lockdown especially. But I think what's very important on coaching junior designers is instead of throwing them a whole bunch of work and like trying to bring them through this work onboarding process, it's very important to like reach agreements. And okay, this is kind of also actually from what's that book called? Highly Effective Habits.
Seven
Many,
habits of highly effective people.
right.
Yeah.
I hate to like keep beating a dead horse on that book. That book has been like everybody knows about it. So 7 Effective Habits of Highly People. What is it something like reach
Seven habits of highly effective people. Yes.
right.
Yeah. What
Stupid,
was that?
stupid book, by the way. What I think everybody needs to do when you're coaching designers is sit down and start reaching agreements. And this expands outside of junior designers. This applies for like CEO, your employers, your managers, your higher ups. So reach agreements on the type of results that you're going to get. Sit down with that person over a cup of coffee, reach agreement on results, on guidelines and resources, how a senior designer can aid a junior to achieve his or her goals, reach agreements on accountability, how would you measure those goals, on meeting deadlines, and the consequences, what's going to happen, basically what's going to happen if the project or product bombs, if you're unsuccessful. So reach agreements on all of that, and you'll kind of realize that everything else will just come into place naturally. Like after reaching agreements, you'll go like, okay, I don't really I don't really care when you get it done, as long as you meet the deadlines, that kind of thing. You definitely have your daily stand-ups, your syncs, your retros, and all that. But you'll notice that after reaching agreements, everything else will just naturally come into place. And it's also a good first step to have. Far too often I see junior designers joining companies. Then they get like shafted a whole bunch of responsibilities. They have like no idea. They're coming in to this line with the best intention. It will be your role to not leave them with a bad taste in their mouth. So yeah, that's the number one thing.
I think that's a very kind way of doing things, and also yeah, that shows a lot of empathy to someone who's new. How exactly do you reach an agreement? I don't want our audience to necessarily go and read that book. And but how do you not because it's a bad book. I read it. I actually gave copies to my cousins to read it when they were growing up as a teenager. But yeah, like how exactly would you do it? Like, let's say you have to mentor someone. How do you facilitate an agreement? Like what exactly do you talk about and not make it awkward? Yeah.
I couldn't do this during COVID, but back then, pre-COVID, it would just be verbal agreements. It don't need to make it like anything.
Yeah, give me an
formal.
example. What is a verbal agreement? Let's say I'm your junior designer. Yeah.
Right. So I'll take you out to coffee. If you like to be wine and dine.
That would be
but
very
typically
nice.
I'll take you out to coffee. I'll go, okay, so here are the results that that's expected of us. I'm not going to say like, oh, okay, you are expected to do this, but I'll touch
so
on
it's not an expected behavior, but it's an expected outcome I want to see from you.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So yeah, it's not behavior. It really is outcome. There really is no point trying to turn your team into like a mini German concentration camp.
Yeah,
because
yeah,
like
that's not good. But yeah,
that's not good. But yeah, really, it's about I would typically ask about your expectations as well. Like which areas do you see yourself growing into? Do you want to focus more on the research aspects of it, of design? Do you want to be more UI based? So that's when you get to identify those aspirations and whatever skill gaps that they have, and then depending on the project that comes in, you will then be at your role. You'll be managing certain projects, and you'll know how to slot them in and give them the best exposure in order for them to like train on the job. Yeah.
Okay. So it's understanding their expectations, but it's also setting expectations of outcomes. And once you have once you agree that this is the outcome we're both driving towards too, then it's easier, much easier to mentor, much easier to manage the person.
Right. You won't even feel like you're mentoring when it gets to that point, because everything will come so naturally.
I think that's important. I think yeah, alignment is probably like that constitutes alignment.
Yeah, and this goes all the way up to like this goes all the way up to maybe you just started a new position at a company. You can bring this up to your CEO because you'll be interacting with him. So you generally you talk about like agreements, your habits of working, and it won't even be a problem if you state this out clearly. If you are both on the same wavelength, and he goes like, okay, as long as this gets this feature gets launched at this point, you don't have to step in the office. Best case scenario, that kind of thing. Yeah, but it's really about getting to know that person and having that person understand you as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now you're training to be an educator, as I understand. So
yes.
I'm curious, like what kind of educator or coaching style did you employ when you were in such a fast-paced environment, whether it's an agency or startup? Like what did you Because obviously they're not your clients, right? Like you're not there to teach them full time. So how do you guide people along while doing the work? Yeah.
Oh, you mean like educating stakeholders,
Educating juniors. Yeah.
educating juniors? The it's a good question. I didn't have a style. I learned this the hard way. So
Yeah, tell us.
I yeah,
Tell
was
us maybe
guilty
what.
of
Yeah.
I was guilty of throwing work on the first day to a junior designer. And junior designer got so overwhelmed. And then we had to take a step back and to see like, oh, okay. Yeah, so through trial and error, that's where the whole agreement thing, I decided to try the whole agreement thing. So yeah, but there was a lot of missteps at the beginning. So I'm if you're out there, I'm sorry. But yeah, there wasn't a straight up style. Everything was just kind of improv, I would say. I didn't have
Yeah.
like I didn't go through any training programs or structure
Yeah,
on
totally.
what to do, how to train this person.
But I know that, well, I'm an educator myself, right? I know that when you want to teach someone, you need to have patience, right? So
Yeah.
how do you be patient with people who may not deserve the patience?
How do you be patient with people? I do not know how to answer that question. How do you
It
be
comes
patient?
naturally to you.
I would say, yeah, I am a pretty chill kind of guy. I think, that everybody seems to take everything so seriously all the time when it comes to these kind of highly driven, kind of fast-paced environments. But every once in a while, take a step back, just laugh it off. Yeah, just be chill. It's work at the end of the day, man. Like you have like people butting heads all the time. You go like, oh, what's that for?
Are you one of those guys who meditate every morning or something? Like,
No,
I'm just wondering. I mean, because you keep saying I'm chill. So I'm just wondering what kind of Kool-Aid are you drinking?
It's just something I have to tell myself. Like, just be chill. Don't be a hard ass.
Don't be a what did something happen when you tried being a hard ass to others?
Well, I guess in the beginning, I might have pissed off a couple of people, just being so rigid in my ways, being so stuck. But you learn these things as you are developing, as you're coming into your own as a designer. I remember right at the beginning, and this I draw back to like your experience joining an agency or whichever company as a designer. You are kind of shaped by the people who have seen it all. So you come in to an environment, they go like, it's just the way things are. You kind of subconsciously, your reptilian brain kind of shapes to that sort of thinking, and then you become this person that someone else has shared and thrown their experience at you. So if like say that person is a very stubborn kind of person, a very difficult person to go with, as you're going into that role, coming
you become
into,
like that
you
person.
become you become like that person, because like people are coming in doing this, they're like fresh, so they're impressionable.
You're right. Yeah,
human nature, and it's just the way things are. So if you are senior designer and it's your first few rounds at managing junior teams, I think it's super important that you leave like a good impression, or at least try to stay neutral.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because when I was young, I used to just look up to my creative director, and I was like, oh, this is like God. Right. And then I was like, oh, what does this person do? What coffee does he drink? Or stuff like that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if that person is super opinionated, he or she has a certain way of doing things, you kind of want to, you know, live up to that person's
Mm,
expectations, and you kind of subconsciously become that person. So yeah,
yeah.
and it's I guess.
How so an audience member asked a very good question. Like if you are a junior person
Mhm.
and you are interacting with a mentor figure, right? How do you make this relationship effective? Like how would you wish your juniors would have engaged you, yeah, as a mentor?
I approach it where it's not a mentor-mentee kind of relationship. I much rather prefer that we get to know each other as uh, friends, I would say. That makes discussion of topics, that makes the ways of doing things a lot easier to bring across. A lot of it makes points easier it drives points across much easier. So you don't have like this awkwardness. Like, you know, you always, if you go to class, then you see your
Yeah,
trainer as a trainer, right? So
yeah, like a teacher. Mm.
I always try and like kind of eliminate that barrier and be as approachable as I can be. Like I'll see things, I'll try to see things how you are seeing them, and I'll try to empathize. And basically, it's our jobs as designers to be able to empathize as much as we can. So just do this for your junior designers. Try and eliminate that barrier. Yeah, by that,
Yeah.
which draws us back to, like, if you have those agreements in place, it won't feel like a mentor-mentee relationship. You can like go hang out with that person after work for like drinks, that kind of thing. So it's a
I think
very
that's real.
casual.
I think that's
Yeah.
very cool. It makes me think you'll be a good teacher.
Hopefully,
And
I strive to become one.
yeah, so I think that's great. I personally I would say um I'll add on to your point, right? Like empathy is a designer's superpower. And if you can empathize with your mentor, that will be great. Because I think the difference between someone who's more senior than you and yourself have is time, right? There's a difference in terms of the amount of time that they can spend or can give away, right? So I
Right.
think being very conscious of their time and being very careful on how you use their time, that would be great. Like, I mean, just coming before any official mentoring session with questions, just taking care and being thoughtful, like, and being flexible if let's say they need
Right.
to reschedule and change things. I think, yeah, like apply that same empathy to the relationship. I think you'll be great.
Yeah, because we are all working on working towards the same goal. Like,
Mm.
why make life difficult for others? It's such a common thing. You know, the agencies, corporates, you have like clashing egos and whatnot, and it just sours the whole environment.
and
Like,
and actually
you
that's
dread
one of
coming
the
to work.
things, yeah, actually that's one of the things I didn't like about agencies. It was about egos, and I didn't know whether you used that word just now on purpose, but did you say wee wee or pee wee or something?
I'm trying to limit my use of colorful language. So, but
but yeah, I've once heard about that definition about how in some conversations in agencies, like people are literally just comparing the size of their balls, right?
no, no, it's
In,
like it
no, no,
becomes a
no.
pissing
I don't mean
contest.
in a literal sense, but I mean like
Yeah,
literally, it's like, hey,
yeah.
I'm good at this. Hey, I'm better at this.
Yeah,
Something like that. Yeah,
it's a common thing lah. So
yeah.
yeah, just if you ever find yourself in that kind of situation, don't engage in a power struggle. It
Mm,
really isn't a pissing contest. It's not worth it. Like,
yeah,
no one's gonna get
yeah.
anything out of it. Like,
100%. We got some questions about UXs, and we're gonna post like very quick ones.
mm,
How do you keep learning, like beyond company training programs and stuff like that. How do you continue staying sharp, right? Whether you're senior, whether you're junior, yeah.
It's super important that you stay up to date. Online, offline channels, build your own network. There's a question like if there aren't any mentors available.
Yeah, that's a
yeah. So don't depend on anyone. You have to feel it intrinsically. You have to want to always be relevant. I guess you have to make the effort. On your day off, take the effort to go and check out what's the latest Figma updates if you want to improve technically. Go subscribe to like design blogs. Just read up as much as you can. Read up on latest processes. Okay, so the thing about like things like processes, right? They're always changing. One of the things to think about, and especially when like there are no mentors available, you're trying to improve yourself constantly. Generally, like when it comes to designing, building a product, you have like an end-to-end process, but know that everything is not set in stone. It doesn't mean you have to follow like step 1, step 2, step 3. Everything can be changed. Everything should be tailored anyway. So try and draw this back to whatever projects or product that you're working on, and try and see where you can improve those processes. I think a huge part of design, I always think that design is all process, that isn't like a destination. So it's complete process, no destination. And if you go along with that mindset, things are always ever changing. You will tend to kind of want to see how to do things more effectively, which in turn translates to thinking about new processes. How can this one process be improved? And if you keep doing that, you'll generally pick up new skills along the way, unorthodox or maybe orthodox, or just new ways of doing things. And with new ways of doing things, it'll kind of reach into your thinking of how you approach things. And then the rest should hopefully fall into place. So yeah, but don't depend on anyone to like, hey, here's what you need to do next. So also draw back yourself to say like, okay, I feel like I can do better in this area. What can I do better? Just take time, go and see what's out there. Attend courses if you have to. Attend a course at Curious Core. I'm sure Dalen will be able to definitely accommodate any of you guys.
Yeah.
So those are some of the best ways.
Or just come talk to us, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just come talk to us. We'll be happy to see what kind of gaps are in your company or even like in your profile. Yeah.
Right.
And we can advise you. I mean, I don't always tell my students to just attend our courses. We actually do recommend them like, hey, go study here, like to learn this thing. Yeah.
Right, because it has to make sense. What they're trying to achieve. It's no point trying to like feed them. Here's your framework. Here's a bootstrap for you to follow, and then you do all of this stuff, and then at the end of it, this is what you'll become. Because again, it's no one size fits all.
Yeah, definitely no one size fits all. I think the reason why we're called Curious Core, it's because I really believe curiosity is a superpower, and it's one of my core values. And as long as you stay curious, like you'll be fine, right? Like you're curious. Let's say you're curious about AI, or you're curious about, I don't know, design systems, or you're curious about accessibility. Right. As long as you're curious about something, that becomes like the thing that you start to get more interested in knowing, and you get to be known for it. Yeah. So I think it also sort of answers this existential question that we have from the audience. Should we start being a generalist or a specialist first? Like specialist meaning you work in a very niche area. Yeah.
Right. My personal preference, and everything that we have talked about it's pretty much very anecdotal. It's very experiential. Just trying to draw back to our stories to try and aid in your career development and whatnot. I think it's more important to be a generalist over a specialist because being a generalist, you are able to, everyone knows what generalist is. But Occam's razor, if you think about it in that way, if you're a specialist at something, if a specialist
You only solve it
sector
in one
industry crashes, you only solve it in one way. And if that industry or sector crashes, you're going down with it. So generalist for sure. That would be my answer. But there are some people who love what they do, they love that specific aspect of it. Yes. Then by all means go ahead, be a specialist.
I think in some way I relate to what Daryl was saying. Like I think being a specialist is like a higher risk.
It depends on your appetite for risk, right?
Yeah. So if you like it's higher risk, but it's also higher reward, right? Can you imagine how many rocket scientists are there, right? Like how many people who actually know how do you do UX design and are great with like, I don't know, maybe design systems only. Right. So I think it's a high risk, high reward. But I do notice in many of our students and their careers, that the people who tend to do better tend to be generalists, because in Asia specifically, generalists tend to land on opportunities much more easily.
Yeah, you have to generally survive better, so to say. It's all about surviving, because maybe you specialize in AI, and then if AI dies one day, and then you're in trouble.
I really, my heart goes out to all the people who were specializing in Web3 and then it went into crypto winter, right? So I mean, in some parts Web3 is well and alive, but I mean it also means like there's a lot less interest these days versus AI, for example. So thank you so much for the conversation, Daryl, and thank you for
so
sharing
much for your
approach and your compassion. I wish you all the best in your next career in teaching, and if people would like to reach out to you, can they just reach out to you on LinkedIn?
Sure, anytime.
Yeah. Awesome. So you can just type Daryl Tan, DARYLTAN, and you can easily find Daryl on LinkedIn and reach out to him, letting him know that you listened to this episode. And for the rest of you, I hope this session has been useful for your career, and thank you for attending. And I'm gonna let Daryl off so he can go have dinner, because he literally went to skip dinner for this podcast session. So thank you so much. And thank you everyone for attending. I will see you next month in our next Working in UX Design.
Thank you so much for having me, Dylan. Thank you everyone. Have a good rest. Have a good dinner if you haven't had your dinner.